Welcome to True Stories with Jungle Jack Steele. I wanted my first episode to be just me and you guys. No guests, no crazy stories, no theories. Just a story that happened back in the 90s that nobody wants to talk about. This happened back in the early 90s in Owensboro, Daviees County, Kentucky. A couple of guys were hunting. They were on Felot off Pleasant Valley Road. They came across a man's body. He was completely naked. He was missing his hands, his feet, and his teeth. Now they called the police, and the police had found out that he had been severely beaten and probably even shot. Remember guys, this is the 90s. Now they believed the man was between 25 and 40 years of age. They really couldn't tell. They didn't have fingerprints to identify him. They didn't have teeth impressions to identify him. All that had been removed. So here's what they figured out. That he was white. He was a male. He was between 5 foot and 5'7", weighed between 120 and 140 pounds. He had medium brown curly hair, had some gray on the temples, was 8 inches long. He was clean shaven whenever he died, and his eyes were possibly blue. He did have a farmer's tan though, so I guess that rules out about 97 million people that visit the tanning bed. Now the man didn't have any clothes, but they did find a pair of gold-rimmed glasses near his body. His face and his skull had been beaten so severely it was sunken in. Now, whenever you look into this case, you'll find that the place that he was discovered, the body was discovered, is way out in the woods. Only hunters go that direction. So they gathered DNA, and hopefully they could test it to find out who this guy was. Looking at the pictures of this guy, you can tell that he was beat pretty rough. His nose and his eyebrows were about the same level of sunken in. Now, this remains unsolved through the 90s, all the way up to 2007. 2007, they sent off his DNA. Now, Indiana sends back that we have the guy. His name's Scott Morris. They'd done some further testing, trying to discover if Scott Morris was drunk, if he was intoxicated at the time of his death. And Kentucky found something disturbing. Indiana sent back and said, no, that's not Scott Morris. We don't know who that is. Weird, right? So, Facebook chimes in with a lot of theories from time to time. I just wanted to share a few of those theories with you. They think that in 1979, few people knew of DNA. They only knew about fingerprints. Back then, the only ones that would have been known to pull his teeth would have been somebody in the medical field or law enforcement. He was possibly a male prostitute used by some of these people and then dumped. Now, the retired sheriff, Keith Kane, has pretty much given way to all kinds of conspiracy theories. He doesn't want to talk about it. He doesn't want to answer any questions about it. All he says is, we don't know. We don't know. Here's some things I want to ask. If you're missing your hands, your feet, and your teeth, and you're supposedly from Chicago, which is where Mr. Kane, the retired sheriff of the case, believes that this man came from, could have been possibly a mob hit. Isn't it more likely that another theory fits better? I know how crazy this theory sounds, but what I can tell you is that this theory that I've come up with fits a lot of different check boxes. And when you start checking off a lot of check boxes, you start to think, is this the truth? Or are we stretching the fact that we know? Because honestly, in this case, we know very, very little. The likelihood of this being somebody that's not from the area, that doesn't hunt in the area, that doesn't four-wheel in the area, or just take their walks looking for sheds, deer antlers that have fallen off, which is a common pastime in Kentucky. The likelihood of them finding this secluded spot, getting in, getting out, is highly unlikely. Also, with no hands, no feet, no teeth. Well, I've seen MacGyver do some stuff with some bubble gum and wrap, but there's no way to cut off a man's hands cleanly, his feet cleanly. Remove all of his teeth with just the contents in your pocket, especially without making a mess. Now let's go a step further. Let's go ahead and throw in that only law enforcement knew about DNA. Only law enforcement knew about removing teeth. Everybody knows about fingerprints. But what with the feet? What do the feet symbolize? After looking into this, I decided, let's look at the feet angle. We figured out that he doesn't have hands for his fingerprints, his teeth for dental impressions, but the feet. Why the feet? So I reached out to a friend of mine who's a podiatrist. He said that feet prints back in the early 90s were being looked at as the same as handprints. They were unique. Now they could get them from the insoles of your shoes. I thought, how many people actually knew this was a thing? Well, it turns out law enforcement in larger cities, especially forensic investigators, were using this technique for years. They'd dust the floor of the house if it had laminate flooring or tile flooring and grab feet prints. If the victims couldn't be identified by their fingerprints, they would try to match the feet prints commonly used in their home or their abode. I just wanted to take a minute and let you know that nobody knew about this in the early 90s. Late 2000s is the first time you can find a publication talking about it that's not in some kind of medical journal or a forensic field journal. Odd, right? Let's take a look at the evidence we have in front of us. Fingerprints are useless. Dental records are useless. Footprints are useless. Pictures in the paper where he was beaten in severely with a sledgehammer, useless. The man was even shot. Now, what do I think happened? I think he was shot. Beaten in so a picture couldn't be used in the media. Dental records were removed with his teeth. Hands and fingerprints were removed as well. One theory that keeps abounding with all the people that have looked into this is pretty simple. They believe the man came down from Chicago, was dumped. His body was placed somewhere just off a random road, and it was a mob hit. The problem with the mob hit in the 90s is they were loud, they were obnoxious, because they wanted it to be seen. You didn't fuck with the mob. And this is why. They put your body on display, or they put you in cement shoes, never to be found. They wouldn't drive 4 hours from Chicago, which is where some people say the man's from, to put you on a back road in Owensboro County. The scenario that fits the best is simply this. Somebody that knew him, because he wasn't held captive. He was cleanly shaven when they found him. Everybody, in a few hours, starts to get stubble. This man was cleanly shaven and probably took in the morning. He was shot somewhere fairly close, if not at that location. There wasn't a lot of blood found there, so I don't think his hands and feet were removed or he was smashed in. And if he was, you can look at the rain patterns. See if there's been some rain that week. Maybe the rain washed it away. Now, he wasn't attacked by scavengers of the area, and everybody knows if you leave a body in the woods for too long, you're going to have something eaten on it. It's like an all-you-can-eat buffet for wildlife. That didn't happen. He was naked. There was nothing to prevent any type of insect or even mammals, birds, from getting to fresh flesh. And once you start eating on it and you have an open wound, they're pretty quick to come and start picking you away. Now, his hands and feet were removed. It's an easy access to a meal for some passing bear, dog, hell, even cats. And that's why I don't trust cats, because science tells us that they will eat your face if you go to sleep for too long. Now, what if? What if this was an officer of the law, a medical professional, emergency medicine? What if every time a 911 call was answered in the 90s, it was a murderer coming to your house in your time of need? What if it was somebody that has already taken a life and was an expert in how to keep a body from being identified? What if that was the person that came to your home in the middle of the night? That's got to be terrifying. Honestly, it scares the shit out of me. Thinking that maybe this sheriff, one of his deputies, a city police officer, or an avid hunter who was a law enforcement officer that just visited the area for the great hunting, had already taken a life, had already taken somebody's dignity, had already taken their hands, their feet, their teeth, so that this poor soul is banished to walk amongst the living. What if this was your daughter's basketball coach, your son's football coach, a teacher at your grandkid's school? We'll never know. Someone stripped away from him the only thing that we're all born with. That's our identity. That's who we are. There's one more thing I want you to think about when you're driving home tonight. I want you to close your eyes and think about the time that somebody in Owensboro, Daviees County, Kentucky, for the past 32 years, has gotten away with murder.